Is that okay, members, if we just continue? Because I think we've tried. Yeah. Okay, we'll resume the meeting. So, is that all the questions? Or did anyone else have any questions on this report?
Richard, did you?
Sorry, Councillor Linden.
Just as I said, it's the specific targeting of the person responsible for. So it's just making sure that we do that. Otherwise, we'll just be throwing whatever form that you do into these businesses, and it'll just not go to the right people. So if we want to get to the right people, we need to target the right people.
Yeah, I think we've taken that on. I think we have spoken about that, haven't we, as well? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. No more questions then. So I will now move a motion that the recommendations on page 5.1 of the report be approved. Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor Sutton. We'll now vote on the recommendation. R1, adopt the Economic Growth Strategy 2025 to 28 and Action Plan 2025 to 26. And R2, following business engagement, delegate authority to the Director of Place in consultation with the Chair of the Economic Development, Regeneration and Tourism Committee to make any final amendments and publish the strategy. We'll vote on a show of hands. Those for? I better vote for this myself. I nearly forgot then. That is unanimous. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 6. This is the extension of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund 2025-26. Members, we will now consider a report of the Director of Place relative to the extension of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund for 2025-26 in accordance with its agreed investment plan. Laurie Edmonds will present this report.
Thank you, Chairman. The report outlines the amount of additional UK shared prosperity funding that we will be receiving for the financial year 2025 to 2026 and a recommended budget breakdown based on previous year's spend. Members are asked to extend delegated authority for UK SPF spend to the Council's Strategic Director in consultation with the Chair of this committee. The focus of the final year of UK SPF is on a streamlined set of interventions that for Rochford District Council are focused on thriving places and business support. Projects coming forward will need to sit under these themes. A list of the types of programs that may be delivered are included in section 2.14 of the report. An update on the success of UK SPF progress to date will be brought to an upcoming meeting of this committee. Emma and I are happy to take any questions.
Yeah, any questions, members? Councillor Belton.
Thank you. Just a couple of minor ones. In regards to the delegated authority or delegated responsibility, you mentioned that an update will come to committee. I just want some reassurance that you couldn't go away and choose a project for £294,000 and just run with it without any kind of communication. Do you know what I mean? I'm a bit concerned that it's a large sum of money that without any consultation with the wider council could go on a path that the council doesn't agree with. So how will you manage that so that we are comfortable with the delegation?
So you're right, the recommendation does delegate to the strategic director, so Fiona, so that she does have that overarching view of the council's policies and strategies across all the departments and teams, so that you've got that. I think what I would say is obviously so that the formal delegation would sit with Fiona and Councillor Hoy, but if Councillor Hoy was minded, particularly on the larger projects, we're very happy to take comments from the committee if that would be supportive, or alternatively to supply further information to the committee about those decisions. The likelihood is that we are looking at probably continuing to extend the projects that we've dealt with this year. UK SPF is time limited, so what's important is we get the right projects in place, and we do that quite quickly so we can make sure that we're spending the full government pot by the end of March next year. And yeah, that's what we're doing at the moment. Just finalising, making sure we've got all the spend that we had previously allocated for this year, and then you'll see that report coming back to a future committee on the successes of this year's programme.
Yeah, if I can just add to that as well, I think we've had discussions about this because obviously it's money for next year, and we in the discussions, which is what we talk about now, it is felt that we use the existing framework, which has been in place for 3 years already. So it's gone through 2 administrations. We felt the framework was quite good, and if we keep to that, there's not a lot of controversy, and it's proved to be quite good in how it's allocated money so far. I wouldn't be comfortable with approving £294,000 to one organisation without coming through the committee, and I wouldn't expect that to happen because I think it needs to be split fairly, and obviously everything will still be scored in the way they've been scored over the last 3 years as well. So and they've been scored independently as well. And I take no part in it, which I'm sure other councillors wouldn't have taken part previously either. So everything is scored independently against the criteria that's already in place. But if I'm at all unsure that we're not following the democratic process, or we should be a bit more open or transparent, then I'll bring it back to the committee. No problem. And there will be updates to this committee as well. Yeah, you've got another question.
Thank you. Yeah, that's reassuring. It was more just to make sure the whole pot of money doesn't go on one project in one area and the rest of the district essentially misses out. So I'm reassured by what you've said. Thank you. Just one final question relating to the 22-25 allocation. Are we going to have spent every penny in time? We're not going to be giving any money back to government?
I can assure you that we're not going to be giving any money back.
Yeah, can I just congratulate Laurie and the team on that? It is surprisingly difficult to get people to spend money sometimes, and to emphasise to them the deadline has been quite challenging at times. But yeah, it's been a great success, and I think I just want to pay tribute because I think Councillor Belton, you were involved in originally, weren't you, in this? And I think it's how we haven't really changed a lot, and the foundations of how it was done have proven to be very good. So thank you. Sorry, Councillor Linden.
Thank you. May I compliment again on this report coming forward. Do we, or can you direct me to a list of specific recipients of these money, even though they may not have actually received it? Do we have a list anywhere we can at least see who is being considered for it?
I know we have this. I'm not sure if they're public or not, or if they're private or confidential. I'm not sure, but Laurie would be able to tell us, I think.
Thank you, Councillor. We have published on our website a list of the organisations that have received grants to date.
That's received. I was thinking more of the ones that have been considered. Is there somewhere where it's live consideration going on? Even if it is P&C, we can have a look at it as a committee member.
We don't have that information live at the moment. I can take that away and come back to you.
I'll just add, it could be that some organisations might not want it known publicly they bid for money and then didn't receive the money or failed on the scoring, perhaps. So I think we have to be very careful with this information, but we'll take advice from presumably the monitor officer as well, Paul Birkinshaw, on this. But thank you. Sorry, no other questions? Okay, thank you, members. I will now move a motion that the recommendations on page 6.1 of the report be approved. Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor Sutton. We will now vote on the recommendations. R1, that the UK SPF budget for 2025-26 be split as follows. £294,432 for the Communities and Place theme and £32,700 for the Support for Business theme. And R2, that authority be delegated to the Strategic Director in consultation with the Chair of the Economic Development, Regeneration and Tourism Committee to spend the UK SPF allocation extension for the financial year 2025-26. We will now vote on a show of hands. Those for? That is 7-4, so again that's unanimous. Thank you, members. Dear. Move on to the fun one now. Item 7, Mill Hall Arts and Event Centre update. Members, we will now consider a report of the Director of Assets and Investments relative to an update on the Mill Hall Arts and Event Centre. Phoebe Barnes will present this report.
Thank you, Chair. The report updates members on the project milestone document that was approved by the committee in September, and updates members further of information that the working group have been considering since the committee last met. What I wanted to highlight is, as the project stands, we are still on track to deliver a preferred operating model to the committee in the next municipal year, which is the June-July cycle. Another point to note is that in 8.1 of the report, in the financial implications, the table is incorrect. The full cast column should read that total expenditure is 361,980 with a variance of 47,610, which means the net position for the forecast column is 222,000 with an overall variance of 87,590 compared to budget. We will amend that. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Belton, then Councillor Sutton.
Thank you. Item point 3.10 relating to the bar and how we operate the bar. What has been the income from the bar for 23, 24 and 24, 25, recognising that 24, 25 hasn't quite finished yet? How's that 20% faring up compared to what we expected?
So I don't have the figures directly, but we work with the bar operator on an open book approach. We discussed this at the working group meeting today around the performance of both the main hall bar and the lounge bar. Since there's been a significant increase in the trend since we first commissioned the contract with the bar operator, but happy to give that information to the committee members as to the 20% that the council has been receiving from that, and also the detail around what the gross income and expenditure for that bar from that open book approach is.
Yeah, could I just say I agree. It should be private and confidential though, because obviously if we give our 20%, people can work out what a private business is also making. So if we can just keep it to ourselves. But Councillor Belton, you ought to come back.
Yeah, I mean, their accounts should be published, so I imagine that it's not private and confidential anyway. But we can take
At
that
some
separately.
point, yes.
Yeah, well, annually it should be public information. All it is, has the figures been factored into what the mill hall is costing us? So we've taken off what they've given us and put it in there. Okay, so that if that information could be shared, because I think it's important, and it's if it is growing, because they're on a rolling contract, it would be beneficial for us to see that it is going in the right direction, because that helps build a business case to say that is a good or a not so good model. But recognising, I think they've been doing a good job and they're very supportive, and I know the organisation and I think they're a great asset to the district, but I'd like to make sure that translates into council revenue, given that they're being subsidised. Thank you.
Councillor Sutton.
In relation to item 3.1, the biggest complaint we hear is that there's no cafe at the Mill Hall. The report touches on work being done by the cafe interior, flooring, decoration, canopy, but there's no mention of the cafe reopening. Having the cafe sitting empty is losing the council valuable revenue, about £2,000 a month. We understand that there are a number of local companies keen to be given the chance to run the business, but they are blocked. If there's a favoured applicant, they are taking a long time to complete. Can we please have an urgent update on what is happening for the next meeting of this committee, not the working group, please?
So regarding the cafe area, as previously mentioned in previous reports, we did do a soft market testing exercise as one of the recommendations from previous council decision. That soft market testing was concluded and reported back. I can't remember off the top of my head what the date is, but the reason being was that at the time, The feedback we received is from some of the operators that did put an interest in. They wanted a commitment because they are a business for a long-term lease. Because we had not decided on what how the council was going to operate that building, we couldn't give them that commitment of a long-term lease. Therefore, we couldn't offer rent-free period for their investment into the cafe. The cafe has been discussed today at the working group and looking at options of how we can generate a food offering in the interim, and also what that means in the long term. Another point to update the committee is that we have appointed consultants, external resource required to pull together all the data that we've been gathering from ourselves as the council, as what's tabled in this report, as well as other work streams such as the marketing report that we are waiting for Colchester Events to produce following the end of this month. They will put that together. They will also do some engagement pieces around those who have expressed an interest, if they are willing to talk to the council again. Appreciate there's been a time lapse since they put their expressions of interest in, but we will approach them for their feedback and to consider their input into it, as well as other organisations that have got as stakeholders interest in the council. That will be pulled together to present back to the preferred operator model. With that will then come decisions around what we do with the food and beverage offering, which will include the bar as well as the cafe, and what is the optimum model to reduce the subsidy that is currently built into the council's budget for the building. So that's where we are with the cafe, and as part of the report that would come back in the June-July cycle, that it will be addressed in there.
Yeah, could I just echo that? This will be, once the expression of interest go out, we'll be able to move forward on this in June, July, when the operating model is decided, and then we'll know exactly how the cafe can operate, the bar will operate, and the whole building will operate. Thank you. Councillor Sutton, then. Is it coming back, Councillor Belton, on that question? Yeah. Okay. So you've got questions. Ask those. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up the Colchester events, because that brings up my next question. Was could the officers give us a verbal report on the soft market testing performance of the Colchester events? We've had feedback that the promotions were poorly received, with shows cancelled due to low ticket sales. Other promoters who did not receive financial support from the council were selling out performances at the same time Colchester were cancelling events. The progress box chart under 7.8 at the bottom of the report shows soft marketing in November and December 24 as action completed in green. This is the period of their cancelled events. Is this action completed, or should it be red, as in delayed? We hope Colchester events are not informing the consultants on how the meal hall moves forward, as they do not seem to understand how to run successful events at the venue. Thank you.
So, as previously discussed, the Colchester events have been were scheduled to put 6 events on. One of the events was cancelled due to a promoter that they were using had gone into liquidation. Therefore, the event could not go ahead because the promoter was not able to operate. The other events that they have put on, and obviously Colchester events, they run events at Charter Hall, Colchester Town Hall, and that they are an events company, not necessarily a cultural element of it as well, which we are conscious of. But the purpose of what the decision is around Colchester events is that they are putting on events. They will feedback as to what works well, what doesn't work well. One of their feedback at the moment is it's difficult to sell tickets because there is no box office, and the online platform is difficult. Obviously, the promoters put that on themselves. There's no one box office so we are getting good feedback. We're getting feedback around as what works well, what doesn't work well. The audience that has attended their events, but as I previously mentioned, we are all as a council securing promoters. The team at the Mill Hall do a really good job at securing events and promoters themselves, and we are gathering all that data as well. So Colchester events information will inform as the evidence and the data, they won't necessarily, they won't be telling us what we do or don't do with the building. That comes back through the cross-party working group, for all the in-gather engagement, as well as then to this committee. What cultural students also do is they are also marketing for us. So they have been doing the social media posts and doing some comms and using their platform as well and their contacts around promoters and that as well to get events that are not cultural events but the council events also out there to make them as successful as well. So what the in Appendix 1 is saying is that we agreed that from September to the end of March that they would have that period to put on events, to do the social media marketing and that as well. So as each month's gone, that's what they have done. Events have been cancelled, yes, but that was slightly out of their control, but the social media and marketing still continued. Once it's all concluded at the end of March, they've got one final event this month, then they will formulate all their data, all what their recommendations as how, if they was to manage the building, they would operate. As I said, they operate Charter Hall, Colchester Town Hall. So how they would operate, and they'd also mention about the food and beverage and whether that was in-house, outsourced and that as well. 4 of our consultants use that alongside everything else that we're doing to make sure we've got a meaningful evidence-based decision coming forward for the committee to consider.
Thank you for that. I will look very much forward to the report coming back sometime in April, May time on that. Just picking up on what the councillor said, which concerns me a bit, the eternity events, we can see their accounts will be published. So have they set up a separate company to actually run the eternity events for the Mill Hall, or is it just part of their bigger business?
Just to clarify that question, as in eternity events, have they set up a separate company for the bar?
Is our agreement with a separate company? Is our agreement with a bigger business?
Agreement.
Okay, so we won't be able to see the figures on their accounts for what we're actually doing with them.
Not specifically directly to the mill. We have, as I said, an open book approach with them, so they give us detailed expenditure and detailed income, which I'm happy to share with the committee, but we wouldn't share that in the public domain. The net position is what we can share in the public domain.
Yeah, because it's not just a financial, is it? It's what other things that eternity events are bringing with their own bookings and their promotions of the Mill Hall as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Belton, then Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of points following on from the questions raised, which I think were really good points and actually sort of then stimulated some other thoughts. Just first off, how much are we spending on this next consultation? Have we got a budget? Have we already agreed that? I've probably been told this before, but I don't recall, so that would be interesting. Some of the response regarding the cafe doesn't quite align with my understanding, because I personally put forward a group that was open to taking on the cafe in an interim period, either doing pop-up catering or pop-up restaurant to provide some extra footfall and to see how that area sat. So I don't think it was a hard, people wanted longer term investment. I get that for a bigger picture, but there were certainly people that were interested last year in operating that space to see how it could assist the Mill Hall and potentially align with some of the other events that were arranged. So that doesn't quite align, and I was told that wasn't possible. And the other questions that I had, so the Colchester point is a good one, and I didn't realise they'd cancelled events. How do we know which events are funded by organised by Colchester, and which ones are organised by RDC's own staff? And I recognise there's been some fantastic ones in the pipeline, but I'm not familiar in how I check who's who, so that would be interesting to understand. And the other issue that we've got is, whilst I don't doubt our leisure team and tourism team are getting some great bookings, it's not the most cost-effective option, as we can see, because the running of the Mill Hall is so much more expensive than the income that it can generate, and that's probably as a result of using council staff to deliver things that potentially could be done in a more cost-effective way outside of that. But if our team are securing better bookings, then we've got a great events team and we need to factor that in somehow to the operating model. But yeah, if I could just have a bit of clarity on the cost of the consultation and the events bit, please.
So a budget has been allocated within the existing base budget of so the consultants that we're bringing in. It's a two-stage approach. So the first stage is confirming what the offer is, because then the offer of the Mill Hall informs the operating model. So in total, that budget allocated is up to 15,000, which is in existing budgets. 15. The consultants we are using were part of the team that produced the consultation around the cultural strategies, which Mill Hall was a defined asset in that. So they have done significant research into the building already, because they produced the consultation and analysed the responses on that to come up with key action plans. Regarding the cafe and the pop-up option, you are quite right that that was presented. At the time when that was presented, as officers, we took a paper back around, in order to do that, the council would have to put investment in to get the kitchens up and running, so that they were safe and operational, because at the moment they're not being utilised, so we'd have to, and it was decided that we wouldn't do that either. So there was feedback around, as I said, that they wanted some long-term commitment. We couldn't do that because we don't have the operating model. And the second one was, as you said, there was some pop-up options, but it was to utilise the existing kitchen area, which we'd have to put some funds in to do that. And that was decided at that point. No. As I said, it's all being kind of, it's being discussed again, and because a decision needs to be made of what is the food and beverage offering that will support the operating model. Regarding the existing events team and cultural events, I don't have it to hand, but we did list the 6 events that cultural events would be putting on and the dates they would be putting them on. And when they're promoting, they don't necessarily promote it as a cultural event, they just promote it as an event like any other promoter does at the Mill Hall. But we can clarify what them events were, and we can come back with the one that was cancelled. And the other point about the existing events team is, you're quite right, and this is what the operating model will do, is how best we structure restructure the operating model to achieve the financial efficiencies, because council staff come at a cost with national insurance and pension, and there's no getting away from that. But there are other models out there that can reduce that and still retain the staff that we have, as well. And yes, the building is of a certain age; it does require investment. So there will, in the arts and the cultural sector, is not affluent at the moment, I would say. So we will always likely have some form of subsidy towards that building, but what the intention is to structure it in a way to reduce that subsidy from a revenue position and a capital position.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to clarify a couple of points in my mind, please, because Ms Barnes was speaking a bit softly earlier on, so I do apologise. Have you identified have you got a preferred supplier list, if you like, preferred candidate list for operating the Mill Hall Cafe? Have you got a preferred candidate? Have you got a timescale to open? And have you got a budget for the refurbishment that will be necessary to make it usable?
So regarding the cafe, there's no preferred operator. The decision that needs to be made around the cafe would be subject to what the operating model is. For example, if the recommendation was that the council is to retain the building and operate it as it currently is, then a decision would be made that we'd have to go out to procure an operator for the cafe. If a decision is around another operating model, could be a form of trust or a kick. Again, that is structured in a way that it keeps it arm's length for the council. So the council wouldn't necessarily procure an operator. It would be down to that arm's length organisation to look at that procurement. So, as I said, we've done the soft market testing. That was done through our procurement portal. At the time, 3 organisations expressed an interest in the cafe operating. So we have that information, and we met with them all individually. to go for options. The decision at the time was to be made to not progress with any of them into a formal tender stage until we confirmed the operating model. The report that will be coming back in next committee cycle will have the time frame, so it will have the preferred operating model for the committee to make a decision on. From that preferred operating model, it will also be supported by an implementation plan. So once that decision is made, how long will it take us to implement that model? And it will come with timelines that we can monitor against, which would include things like the food and beverage offering as well. So at this moment in time, no, but that is what will come in the next few months, is the piece of work we're working on.
Okay,
So in summary, if you excuse me, please. So in summary, the likelihood of that cafe opening in the not too distant future is pretty remote. We're probably talking about the back end of the year from the sound of things.
The cafe's not going to open within the next few months, no, but we should have a very good idea of how it will be operating by June, July time, when the expressions of interest can then come in from how, or that will be when the operating model is decided, so we'll know how the cafe will be operated and we'll have a good idea then. Councillor Webb?
Thank you. Just a quick question that's come out from the response there that you've just given. You've said that there'd always been ongoing subsidy to the Mill Hall. Do we have a figure in mind as to what that ongoing subsidy would be, please? Thank you.
So at this moment in time, from a revenue position, as highlighted in the updated figures that will come as amended, the forecast is for this year will be subsidising the Mill Hall by 222,000. From memory, it was a similar figure last year. We again can bring that will be brought through. The consultants are analysing our financial information of our running costs and that as well. And on top of that, then there is obviously the capital budget that we are looking to spend next financial year of a total of up to 1.2 million, and there is further capital expenditure required to keep the building compliant, to keep the building operational. The purpose is the operating model is to look at the current costs of how we're operating. The report obviously highlights that there is idle time. There is time that the building is open and there's no bookings on, so it's not generating any income. It's just costing. And the report also highlights of the average income. So we have a lot of bookings, but their average income is generating in 20 to £30, whereas the bigger events, which are what generate a greater income. So again, we will take that all into consideration, and that will look into the financials of how we can reduce the current revenue subsidy, which is equating to around just over 200,000 per annum.
Thank you. No other questions that I can see. Members, this report is to note only. Is this noted? And then we'll have one recommendation, which we've noted. I didn't read it out properly. I better read it out properly for the record. To note the progress to date against the project milestone document, Appendix 1, for concluding an optimised operating model for the Mill Hall Arts and Events Centre. Sorry, is that noted? Do it properly. Thank you very much, members. That now concludes our business for the evening. Thank you for your attendance. The meeting has ended at 20:25.